Welcome back to Long Delays Hobbies. This morning, the long anticipated Middle Earth strategy battle game FAQs were finally released. So I thought we could take a few minutes to just go through each of them. They've released FAQs for each of the currently active publications that they have. They also have said that these are going to be designers' commentaries in addition to FAQs and errata, which is a bit of a slight change of approach for them. So let's just go through the different FAQs one at a time. In case you're still somewhat new to these FAQs, changes or additions are in pink. So all the black text are FAQ bits that were there previously. So I'm just going to ignore the FAQs that were in black and just look over the pink ones. So in the designer's commentary, first question, can a model make way into a control zone? Yes, that's always how I've played it, and I'm pretty sure that was clarified in the previous edition. In the current edition does not make it clear if you can. It was pretty clear in the last edition wording that you could make way into a control zone, but I guess this was something that they just missed. Can models benefiting from a successful heroic combat dismount, make jump, leap, climb, swim test, or pick up objects? So the picking up objects is probably the biggest one. Yes. If a monster wins a dual roll while prone, can they still use brutal power attacks? So this has come up for me more than once. Common sense would say no, they can't. I've seen people argue that, well, the rules don't say you can't. So there's nothing stopping, a troll that's prone from, using a brutal power attack. But now it's been clarified. If a chariot is wounded by something that would kill it instantly, and the chariot is being ridden by a hero, and are any hero models riding the chariot also killed instantly? No. A lot of these questions that get asked are, I think, fairly obvious, because if you read the chariot rules, it's pretty clear that if a hero riding a chariot and the chariot gets destroyed, then the hero just dismounts, and that's in the chariot rules. Before this FAQ, there would always be an argument. Well, your chariot, and therefore I've instant killed your hero riding the chariot. If a model benefiting from the shield wall special rules knock prone, they still benefit from this shield wall special rule for okay, yes, as the special rule states. Yeah, this is one of those that again is pretty obvious. They added that bit to shield wall, the shield wall special rule in this edition, because of what can happen if a cavalry model charges the model with the shield wall special rule. This is kind of an unnecessary FAQ, but they must have been receiving this question a lot. In the last edition, it was less clear. What happens if two models that are carrying a heavy object together need to take a jump, leap, climb, or swim test? So yeah, this has come up in narrative games. Once both models are in the relevant position, make a single roll for the required tests and apply the result to both models. They may then continue their activation as normal. Okay, so I would say that's a good ruling. This is obviously really only something that comes up in narrative games for the most part. Although there is one of the match play scenarios also has you used heavy objects, so it is something that could come up even in match play games. Barge. Change the final sentence of the first paragraph to read, models may still make way for losing models, and if they do, may back away up to 3 inches rather than the usual 1 inch in a direction chosen by the monster model's controlling player. When a model makes way in this manner, it will only do so the minimum amount it needs to do. Allow the model backing away to back away. It won't be forced to make way if a full 3 inches, if only making way 1 inch would suffice to allow the barged model to back away 3 inches, and won't be automatically knocked prone if it is able to make way the required amount. Wow, that's a lot of words. Okay, what does this say right now? Okay, the current wording says, models may still make way for losing models, and if they do, must make way 3 inches rather than the usual 1 inch. They've added all of this bit here, and they've also, the current wording says must rather than may. So I think what this is saying is if you make way, you're only required to. I have to see this like in practice, but I'm pretty sure what this is saying is now you only have to back away 1 inch. I almost feel like this is a typo. It says in the current wording it says must make way. I just caught that because if you read this whole thing, what it says, models may still make way for losing models, and if they do, they may back away. So how can the same model make way and back away? It doesn't make any sense. These are kind of mutually exclusive moves. I think this is meant to say make way. But if we make this say make way, the backing away model has to back away 3 inches, but previously what happened was all the making way models also had to make way for 3 inches, but now they only have to make way for 1 inch. So you can't go in with the troll and like wreck someone's shield wall by going in and making like 3 models back away 3 inch and then making everybody else behind them make way for 3 inches. And then if they can't, then they're all knocked prone. So that's not a thing anymore. Let's take a look at the Hobbit FAQ. It looks like the only change to the Hobbit FAQ were to give the Army of Thror an additional army rule. Army of Thror may have up to 50% of its warrior models armed with throwing weapons. So, okay, that's fine. I don't think this is going to make a huge difference to Army of Thror. They're not really that great to begin with. It is interesting that they are trying they're trying to make the Army of Thror better. That's not something that traditionally Games Workshop has done for this game. Historically, what they do for Middle-earth is they take armies that are doing kind of too well or overperforming and they nerf them. They don't take armies that are underperforming and buff them. That's just not a thing that they do in this game. Armies of the Lord of the Rings. Okay, when Gwahir uses the Piercing Cry special rule, models that are within 6 of him that are affected when he uses it, or is it models within 6 inches of him when they activate that are affected? Only models that are in 6 inches of Gwahir when they activate. Models that are within 6 inches when he declares, but not within 6 inches when they activate, are not affected. So you can't just take Gwahir, use Piercing Cry, and then do like a, heroic combat with him or something, have him fly away. You can't do that. So, because models won't be affected anymore. They have to stay within 6 inches of Gwahir. In the Realms of Men army list, what heroic tier are other hero models? So this keeps coming up over and over again. People keep asking about this. Guys, they are heroes of fortitude. I don't know how many times Games Workshop has to say this. They're heroes of fortitude. They're except for siege veterans, who are always minor heroes. I can't wait until this somehow ends up in another FAQ. Come on, guys. They are heroes of fortitude. If a hero declares a heroic move, march, or shoot, whilst in range of multiple models with the Whips of the Master special rule, do they get to roll a d6 for each model or just one, regardless of the number of models? Whips of the Masters is the Mortar Orc Taskmaster special rule. I don't think anyone has actually done this, but I've heard multiple people bring this up and say like, oh, what if I bring like 4 Orc Taskmasters? According to the current rules, prior to this FAQ, you could just bring a bunch of Orc Taskmasters, roll for each one, and theoretically get your march back, or move back, or whatever. Well, now that's been fixed. How does Grima Wormtongue's Traitor Within special will work in scenarios where warbands enter the battlefield, such as Reconnoiter, or those that use Maelstrom of Battle? If you wish to deploy Grima with an enemy warband in these instances, you must select the warband at the start of the game. When that warband enters the battlefield, after all models from that warband have moved into the board, Grima may then also do so. That makes sense. That's kind of how I've seen it played, but it's good to see that they've spelled it out, to remove any like ambiguity. Again, a lot of these changes are just common sense, how most people would play this. There's always like the 1% of people who will say, well, it's not in the rules, so I don't, I'm gonna just, I'm gonna just play it however I want to play it instead of using the common sense approach. They can't make that excuse anymore. Piercing Cry. Change the last sentence to say, if he does, then the enemy models within 6 inches of Gwahir cannot charge, but may otherwise act normally. So this is a nerf to Piercing Cry, because the current verbiage of Piercing Cry says they cannot move that turn. It's a very, very feels bad mechanic, and I know some people will say, like, super meta lists don't contain eagles. It's still a very feels bad mechanic. I'm kind of glad this has been changed. Shelob's base has been updated to be 80 millimeters. We knew that was coming, because her base in the new box was 80 millimeters. Grima Wormtongue, Traitor Within. Whilst Grima is considered a friendly model, he does not have a control zone. It may ignore the control zones of enemy models and may move through enemy models as if they weren't there. Grima moves this way. He cannot end his move overlapping or in base contact with an enemy model. Additionally, whilst Grima is considered a friendly model, enemy models may move. What's changed here? It doesn't help that the Traitor Within rule takes up like an entire page. The current wording says, whilst Grima is considered a friendly model, Grima may ignore the control zones of enemy models and may move through enemy models as if they weren't there. So what they've added is, he does not have a control zone. So you can't just plug him back there and have you use him to move block your opponent, which was really annoying and I don't think was intended, but to be fair, that is what the rules said. And they have also added this bit here: enemy models may move through Grima in the same manner. So your opponent can just move through him. You can just walk through him, which makes sense. You know, they're supposed to be treating him as if he is like their friend. You know, they wouldn't treat him as an enemy combatant. They would just walk through him. I understand it. They're trying to nerf him because people were kind of abusing him. So this should put an end to that abuse. These restrictions immediately end if Sauron suffers an unsaved wound. So what it currently says is if Sauron is slain. So now Sauron just has to suffer a wound. Oh, and they've also added this bit here, which was definitely an oversight originally, that this should never have been a thing. You should never have been allowed to choose Grima as a target in Fog of War assassination. Conjure Lightning. Choose a point on the battlefield at least 12 inches away from any friendly model, including Grima Wormtongue. So I like this change. I know a lot of people wanting probably a bigger nerf. Honestly, what this probably means is that you're just never going to take Grima in Army of the White Hand. Grima's whole thing was movement shenanigans, and a lot of those have been removed. You can't use him to move block your opponent anymore. I mean, well, I say that he still has this whole thing about making your opponent spend, multiple might points. That's still really strong. I think this is a strong change. Not super friendly to the lore, because I don't think Sauron would care if he was hitting Grima or his own people with lightning, but I get it from a game design perspective. Drums the Deep. So they have nerfed this Drums the Deep rule. Once per game, at the start of any move phase, can declare that you're using this special rule. I do not care for this. I get a lot of people who played against Moria didn't like that they just got a quote-unquote free banner, although a lot of other armies basically get free banners too, so I don't know why Moria gets picked on. Making arguably their best army rule, making it once per game, it is a feels bad. Like, I don't think this is the right way to have handled this. And yes, I do play Moria, and I do have a Moria army, so yeah, I might be biased. I think the way they could have handled this better is probably to have said that a Goblin Drummer costs 75 points. But then again, now that I say that, they've kind of married themselves to that you can't take a Goblin Drummer in this list because there is no Goblin Drummer in the movie. So having your Goblins be taking away +1 courage doesn't really. I think they probably could have. They could have added a Goblin Drummer. If they didn't want to do that, maybe they could have just added the option of taking a drum, not a drummer model, but just a drum for 75 points. So you pay 75 points, you have a drum in the army. Now that I'm saying that, can you take a drum in Depths of Moria? I don't think you can. From the Legions of Middle-earth book, no, you can't. Oh, but is he in the Legacy? Okay, here's what you do now. You spend 75 points on a Moria Black Shield drum. It's not as good. It's not board wide. It's only 18 inches, but 18 inches is still pretty good. It's going to cover most of the board. You keep hitting the back. And actually, the Moria Black Shield drum counts as a banner for the purpose of victory points. So it gives you everything you need, and it's actually better than the army rule. So you take this guy, maybe take a couple little black shields to hand off to, serve as his bodyguard, a couple black shield warriors to protect him, keep him from getting shot. You still have to spend 75 points, but I think these rules are so good, I think they're worth 75 points, which is why I think Depths of Moria did so well, is because they kind of got a 75-point rule for free. This kind of sucks, but if you're playing in an environment where legacy models are okay, which I don't know anyone who isn't, honestly, then just use the Moria Black Shield Drummer. Armies of Middle-earth. Where does the Great Eye Marker deploy in scenarios that don't have a specific deployment zone? In these instances, the Great Eye Marker would deploy touching a player's board edge. So, again, kind of common sense. In Maelstrom, battle scenarios determine which board edge is the controlling board edge, just like it's a siege engine. Common sense. Tom Bombadil. Add the following to the end of the bullet point. A model may only be affected by this song once per turn. I'm not sure if anyone ever abused this or not. I'm sure someone out there has. If you're not familiar with this, what this says is, until the end of the turn, friendly models that begin their activation within 6 inches of Tom Bombadil may add 3 inches to their move value and will treat all areas of difficult terrain as open ground. Basically, Tom Bombadil can spend a will point and add 3 inches to someone's move if they're within 6 inches of them. So what people had kind of speculated before was that you can spend all 12 will points, add 3 inches of move to someone's movement, and so he can add 36 inches to your move. If it's an infantry model, it's got 6 inches of move, so you've got 42 inches of move. You know, he can spam all of his will. You've got 42 inches of move, just turn 1. And so somebody can just go all the way across the board. Why you would do that, I'm not entirely sure. It is a thing you could do. It is now not a thing you can do, because you can only be affected by it once per turn. Thing that they probably should have noticed when they were playtesting. Breathe fire. This bit is all the same. If the shot hits, then the model that is hit suffers a strength 10 hit, and if they suffer a wound from this hit, which is not prevented, they are automatically slain. All other models within 2 inches are immediately set ablaze, but they will not be automatically slain if wounded, and is a fire-based attack. This first bit is the same in the current wording. This is a nerf because a lot of people complained about this. In the current wording, what it says that if the shot hits, then the model that is hit and all models within 2 inches of the hit model will suffer a strength 10 hit. Any model that suffers a wound from this shooting attack, which is not prevented, is automatically slain. It's actually been like this for quite a long time. It was pretty sure it was this way in the last edition, but I guess they've just now decided to do something about it. It is kind of a feels bad if you have never played against a dragon before. I think people are taking dragons more often now, but if you've never played against a dragon, and you just bring like a big line of a battle line against dudes, a shield wall, and they just get lit up by a dragon fire, and you just see 10 guys just melt away from one breathed fire attack. So what they've now said is that only one model will suffer that strength 10 hit. The other models that are within 2 inches will get set ablaze. There are ways to turn off set ablaze. So you can make yourself go prone, that'll turn it off. You can also roll a 6 in the in phase. Being set ablaze is not nearly as bad as taking a strength 10 hit. And also, they got rid of the bit where they're automatically slain. If you've got like, I don't know, a 2 wound model, like a Bjorning, or like a captain type of hero or something that's only got one fate point, you don't have to worry about them getting like, you know, auto killed from this anymore. They'll get set ablaze. Again, not good, but still preferable to getting a strength 10 hit and auto killed. Match play guide, FAQ and errata. Scenarios that reward victory points for killing the most expensive model. What happens if the most expensive model was part of a pair or group, such as Shank and Rot Orc Scavengers? In these instances, all models that are part of the points cost will need to be killed. So this is a kind of an encouragement to take Shank and Rot. I know a lot of people were saying there's really no reason to take Shank and Rot. You can only really take them in one list, and they're not really good in that one list. In the Reconnoiter scenario, if a hero with Dominant X special rule escapes the board, it counts as X number of models for the purpose of working out how many models have escaped, but does it also count as X hero models? To be honest, I'd never really thought about that. In the core rules, all heroes have like Dominant 2. Aragorn, I think, has Dominant 3, and other heroes have other values and so on. I guess somebody thought like, hey, maybe it counts as like 2 heroes escaping rather than 1 hero. It would seem a little weird to count one actual hero who escaped as 3 heroes because of this Dominant 3 keyword, because if you read the rules for Dominant and you just apply a little bit of common sense, you would understand that that's not really the purpose of the Dominant keyword. That's been clarified. Contest of Champions. What happens if a hero chosen to be the champion and that hero does not deploy normally at the start of the game? With those situations, the hero must deploy as described in the scenario, rather than using special rules for arriving later. Yeah, you would just deploy them like you would the rest of your army. If you're building your army around having the Watcher on the Water be your champion in Contest of Champions, you're probably not going to have a great time. Although Watcher on the Water can kind of fend for himself, because he has that special rule which allows him to, you know, get off the board and come back on, but he's not going to start off the board, and neither will the Goblin Mercenary Captain anymore. So I think this is a good change. So there's been some changes to the Escort the Wounded scenario. You score 2 victory points for each of your wounded allies that is in base contact with a friendly model, and no enemy models that is in your opponent's board half. For each wounded ally that has been rescued, you instead score 4 victory points. So what does this currently say? In the current rules, it just says you score 2 victory points for each of your wounded allies that is being carried by a friendly model. I actually had this question too when I played this scenario, because the scenario doesn't clearly define what it means to be carried. It's because they count as heavy objects. There's some ambiguity, since heavy objects have to have 2 people carrying them, and you are technically not being carried in the end phase. You only carry something in the move phase. So they've fixed that. So now you're just, if you're in base contact with a friendly model, you score 2 points. They probably did the same. Yes, so they've done the same thing here. This is how my play group has played this, by the way, because we kind of understood that this is what they meant. They've corrected this. So they've also corrected this to just say in base contact instead of carrying. So what are my thoughts on these FAQs? Well, I think they have continued their pattern of not making big changes or major changes. For the most part, just clearing up things that needed to be addressed. Like, for example, some of these questions are, I would consider them fairly obvious. Can a model make way into a control zone? Like, I mean, obviously yes, but somebody asked the question, so it's good to have it answered. They tend not to make big balance changes in these FAQs, unlike some of their other games. I think it's good to see that they're continuing that. We will see how things shake out. I'm not sure how much this is actually going to impact things like Army of the White Hand. I mean, I think it will to some extent. Green is not as good as he was, but Army of the White Hand is still a pretty good list. I think this will shake things up a little bit. People are going to be adjusting their lists accordingly, according to some of these changes that they made in the FAQ. Monsters are definitely worse than what they were before, but not significantly. The change to Barge, I think, is a significant change. You're probably going to want to hurl now in many instances rather than barge, unless you're trying to like get onto an objective or something in the late game, maybe, but or get your opponent off of an objective. But overall, like I think these are mostly good and positive changes, except for the change to the depths of Moria. But there's a workaround for that, which is just get a Black Shield drummer. What are your thoughts about the Miller Strategy Battle Game FAQ? Are you happy with it? Do you think they could have done more? Or do you think they did too much? Were there changes that you were expecting to see that didn't happen, or were there some nerfs that you're not happy about, like me? Were there some additional buffs you wanted to see? Leave all that stuff down in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and don't forget to have a great day. Take care.